Communication, as we know, and we take for granted, because it underpins our ability to be effective in every aspect of our life. We tend to forget how important it is. The quality of our relationships, which really is directly correlated to the quality of our life, is underpinned by communication. When the communication falls over in a relationship, the relationship becomes glitchy. So for an entrepreneur who has an idea, to be able to manifest that into reality is through communication. If you can't communicate that idea, it does not become reality.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. Entrepreneurs, does any of this sound familiar? Have you hired only A players, purchased the latest fire plays from so-called gurus, brought in hotshot managers from winning teams, consistently almost become an elite organization, only to have it result in talented employees regress to mediocrity, tactical plays spiking performance and then fading away quickly, managers losing discipline and hunger and either leaving or just coasting, clients, peers, and your team stop waiting for you to get it together and just move on? Do you really think the difference between you and the industry-leading team is a hire or slick new marketing play? That's the same tired crap my Chicago Bears have shoved down my throat for over 30 years. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers have two coaches in 50 years, they've had two quarterbacks for 20 years, and they're a contender every single year. Many leaders buy the best playbooks, draft the best talent, and hire the best coaches, and yet year after year return without trophies. Who could blame them? Most business coaches, consultants, and so-called gurus only sell tactical playbooks designed to provide a brief spike followed by a return to business as usual. The truth is, winning is simple. You need a clear North Star supported by managers and role players that have absolutely zero uncertainty about how they can help the team win today. Our simple program helps you become a dynasty organization from top to bottom. Dynasty Defined not only helps you structure a team that's capable of consistently winning championships, but once you do, they'll be writing their own playbooks, recruiting the best talent to come play for your team, and calling their own plays from the field. The choice is yours. Continue to hope that the next hire or brand new marketing play will finally solve all your problems, or commit to winning permanently. Roll up your sleeves and let's get started defining your dynasty. I am beyond proud to announce that we are accepting applications for Dynasty Defined. Cohorts are limited to 8 entrepreneurs and they fill up quickly. So head on over to spearandclover.com now and claim your spot. I can't wait to see you on the inside. Jem Fuller has lived a colorful global life. From barefoot backpacker to corporate leader, fire dancer and traditional tattooist, kindergarten teacher to motorcycle courier, masseuse and reflexology to laborer and travel consultant. Now his time as partner and father, coach, facilitator, and retreat leader. He is the author of the recently published book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, and can be seen delivering his TEDx talk on YouTube. Like many of my favorite people, Jem is well-traveled both figuratively and quite literally. Please welcome my friend, Jem Fuller. Jem, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Jason. I'm really, really good, man. Things are good today. And I say that most days. But no, today's a great day. And thanks for having me on your show, Jason. I've been really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. And, you said you're having a good day, and I also happen to know you live by the beach, and I usually have good days and live by the beach. Do you think that's part of it?
It could be. We're coming out of winter and our spring, where I am, spring is not, necessarily just nice warm weather every day. Sometimes it feels like it's winter still, and then sometimes it feels like summer is starting to emerge. And last night we had a full moon lunar eclipse and a beautiful blood red moon.
Mm-hmm.
And today's actually, it feels like the first day of summer. It's going to be warm today. My partner and I have got a couple of hours in between clients this afternoon, so we're going to race down and get in the ocean. So yeah, today's a great day, man.
Oh, wow. I love it. So listen, you do like 25 different things that I love. And so I don't know how we're going to wade through all this in this amount of time, but I can't wait to hear more about it. Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about retreats. I know that you have hosted retreats. How did you get into that? What does that mean, and what do you do?
Yeah, you've started with my favorite part of, of all the things that I do. The retreat, to facilitate retreats, is the most fulfilling and nourishing for me. And I think the reason it's my favorite thing to do, well, there's a few reasons, but in terms of the outcomes for the client are the most profound. And there's a few reasons, I believe there's a few reasons for that. One of the important ingredients for the retreats that I run is that they need to be in remote and stunning natural environments. So one of our flagship program is in the Himalayan mountains in remote northwest India. There's another program we run in the remote jungles of northern Bali. I've run programs here in the desert regions of northern Australia. And I think there's a couple of reasons why I insist on them being in stunning nature, because when we're immersed in, awe-inspiring, breathtaking nature, it reminds us really that we're a tiny part of a much bigger system, which is beautiful. But also it needs to be a bit of a mission to get there. The journey to get to this place of retreat needs to be something, because you've then traveled, you've made some effort to get out of your normal paradigm. I mean, you and I could say, right, let's run a beautiful personal development or leadership retreat, and we'll hire out a nice hotel in our city, and we'll go and we'll be in the conference room, and we'll do like a corporate getaway for the weekend. We're still in our city, we're still in our buildings, we're still in our normal paradigm. So your capacity to have brand new ideas, light bulb moments, ways of thinking that you've never had before is decreased, because you're in the same paradigm. But when you travel to a far land that you've never been to before, and the smells are different and the sounds are different and the people are different, and then you go into remote, beautiful nature and you're immersed into retreat where everything slows down, and then we sow the seeds of some new ways of looking at yourself and life, then we can have the really, life-defining experiences, which is what our clients get when we take them away. So I love it. And the fringe benefit for me is that I love travel, and I get to go to beautiful places around the world. So
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think I can't help but think of the guru sitting on top of a mountain, right? This is a trope. This is a thing that people have seen in movies and books. And I assume it's real, that there's probably somebody sitting on a mountaintop in Tibet, that if you climb up and gather a certain rare flower, that you may find enlightenment or whatever. But I've thought a lot about that, and I have not yet landed, and may never land on exactly what the answer is for me. But I want to throw a couple of ideas out there at you. Number one is the journey, the ordeal to get there is certainly the primer, and I think you really painted that picture beautifully. Number two is the fact that it's very difficult, and there's only one, right? There's only one place that they can be, and so there's some element there. Does that ring true to you? Is that something? I know you're not purporting yourself to be a guru, but you're certainly facilitating a very relatable experience to people that seems to be incredibly profound and powerful.
yeah, and I hope the guru that they find is themselves.
Yeah, I think maybe it's supposed to be, right?
And in our Himalaya program, which traditionally was a 2-week program, but now in 2023 we've launched a condensed version for corporates and executives, because it's hard for them to get away for 2 weeks. So we've got a 9-day program now. But in the 2-week program, there's 7 days of remote trekking. And when I say remote, we go to places where there are no other people. It's not like in Nepal, where you're walking along to Everest Base Camp and you're in a line of 1,000 people going to Everest Base Camp. So where we go, we have pack horses and guides, my local connections over there. I call them my family. They're not my blood family, but I've been a member of this family in this community for 25 years, in this village in the foothills of the Himalaya. And so we have our own local guides and horses, and where we trek, your phone doesn't work. So you are 7 days completely off the grid, which in itself is lovely. And we are camping, we are at altitude. It's rough. It's not for the faint-hearted. But it's beautiful. And on day 5 of the 7 days of walking, we walk in silence all day, not a word. And we walk really slowly, and that's one of the most profound days. And it's interesting, the Westerners that come on this program, they're saying to me, where are we getting to? Where's the peak? What elevation are we climbing to? Where are we aiming to get to today? And I say to them, there's no finish line. We're just walking. And they're like, what do you mean we're just walking? We've got to be aiming to get somewhere. No, we are just walking. So that top of the mountain with the guru sitting on it, they actually find that in the moments of just walking. And it's stunningly beautiful. We are up at elevation, and it's hard to put into words how magnificent the Himalayan mountains are. They are just so ridiculously big and extensive that it's really quite humbling.
Gosh, that sounds beautiful. You may have just sold me on one of your next retreats. I did a similar thing. We were hiking the Machu Picchu trail, or the Inca trail to the Machu Picchu, and I took a vow of silence that lasted until my sisters got very irritated with me, and for whatever reason. And so I was not able to do the entire hike that way, but I did do it for a good chunk of it, and it was just soul-shatteringly beautiful. And I can only imagine what this is like. So how did we get here? How did you begin having retreats? It sounds like you've been doing it for some time. Take us back, give us your origin story of how you ended up doing this, because I know several people who've thrown the idea around, but it's only the most intrepid of us who take that leap and pull the trigger.
So back in 1998, and I was in my late 20s, and I was wandering around the Indian subcontinent, so India, Pakistan, China, Tibet, Bangladesh. I was wandering around this subcontinent for a couple of years, and which was in itself a tremendous period of my life. And I came across this. I'd been given I met this old English hippie down in the bottom of India. And he said to me, if you're ever up in the Himalaya, if you're ever in this area, I live there, come and visit me. And I had his name scribbled down in the back of my journal, Old John Naga Krishna Temple. He lived at this Krishna temple. And 6 months later, I was on a bus, bumping along up in the Himalayan mountains. And I was like, oh, wow, that English guy, John, he's up here somewhere. So I looked in the back of my book, and then and I saw the name Naga of the town. So I pulled out my Lonely Planet travel guide book. This is back in the day before we had smartphones. And I looked it up, and I saw on the map, wow, I'm going to be going right past there. So I jumped off the bus and hitchhiked with a 4-wheel drive up to this little village. And then I trekked up the mountain, and I found this Krishna temple, which is above a village on the side of a Himalayan mountain in the forest. Truly beautiful. By the way, this area, this neck of the woods, is where J.R. Tolkien spent a lot of his time when he was coming up with the Lord of the Rings series. And it feels like that. Yeah, it's beautiful. Anyway, long story short, I ended up living there for 3 months with this family, became very close, and John, Old English John, and became very close with this family, took off, did some more travels around Pakistan and Tibet, and but wanted to come back and spend more time with them. So I came and lived with them for another 3 or 4 months back in 1998, and they became my Himalayan family, and we've been in touch ever since. And in that time, in my late 20s, I said to Papu, who's my brother, I said, man, I've got this feeling I'm going to bring people here, and I don't know what that looks like, but I've got a feeling that I want to bring people away from their computers and microwaves and televisions and cars and buildings and suits and ties. And I want to bring them here to the forest and get their hands dirty again, get them cooking on a fire, get them sleeping on the earth. I had this feeling. And Papu, my brother, said to me, he's a conservationist, and he said, I've got an idea. Let's take them trekking and pick up rubbish. That was his idea. So that was in 1998. Then in 2013, and I'd become a father by now, and so had Papu. With both of us had kids, and life had been busy and wonderful. And I had then been through my midlife crisis / awakening, and I was studying coaching. I wanted to be a coach, and I had this light bulb moment, and I downloaded the whole thing in about 3 minutes. It's called Leaders in Life. It's a leadership program. I take people back to Nugga. We go trekking. We pick up rubbish. Da, la, la, la. I saw the branding. I saw the program. I saw the whole thing. Like in 3 minutes, it was like a matrix download.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I had to do it. And it was scary because it's like, wow, there's a lot of risk in this. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. But I stood up in a networking group and said, I'm going to take people to the Himalayan mountains. It's a leadership retreat. Does anyone want to come? And some business owners said, yeah, we'll come. And I went to my accountant and I said, mate, I think I'm going to do this. How should I do this? And he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, it scares the shit out of me, so I have to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's like, holy, this is, I felt the fear and I'm like, I think this is a sign that I've got to do this, And he said, well, you'll need to set up a proprietary limited company to, separate yourself from the risk if something goes wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, how much to set up a company? And he said, oh, it'll be about $1,500. And I said, oh, well, that puts a pause to it because I don't have a spare $1,500. I was broke at the time. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, I've got it. I'll pay to set up the company. And I said, oh man, really? I'll pay you back. He said, no, you don't have to pay me back. I'm investing in you and your idea. I believe in you. And so he did. He set up my company for me, and we ran our first program, and we took people over there, and we've been running it ever since. We had to pause through COVID, obviously, but yeah, we've taken a lot of people over there and changed a lot of lives now. Oh, and just the last little nice bit to this is that not only did we pick up rubbish, but we raised money to put a rubbish education program in and rubbish bins into the village. And now the shepherds know that they can't just throw their rubbish. We raised enough money to build a little school in the village. And now each year we sponsor a few kids through education over there as well.
Wow. What are the people like over there?
Delightful. Oh,
Yeah.
generally speaking, there are some who are, but no, they're beautiful people, because what I find is that people who are primarily concerned with survival are quite simple. They keep their life simple. They're living subsistence. They have to grow a lot of their food. They have to work their sheep. They're living in a small village in the foothills of the Himalayan mountains. They're also very spiritual people, religious. They're Hindu up there, but their version of religion, which is more a spiritual day-to-day way of being, is beautifully enmeshed with nature. So they've been there for many thousands of years before Hinduism was even a thing, and they were what we would call pagan or animist. They had their own rituals and they had their own gods and deities and understandings of connection to nature and weather and farming and all this sort of stuff. And Hinduism, when Hinduism kind of spread, it just kind of came up and said, oh yeah, that's this god and that's this god, and you're Hindus and you didn't even know it. And the local village people said, sure, whatever. So it's more really about their connection to earth and to the forests and to the mountains, and they live in reverence of their natural environment. They're very connected to their natural environment. They're beautiful people, man, and super hospitable. So it's a joy. It's our second home now, and it's a joy to be there.
I imagine they're very proud to share that with you when you bring these folks up to them.
Yeah, they are, and I'm also very protective of who I take. I've said no to people. So I interview people who want to come on this program. I interview them first. And if I don't want to expose my village to certain people, I don't take them.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
So what is that process like? Do people struggle when you take somebody out? I mean, I can tell you, coming back from the military would be the first thing that comes to mind for me. Obviously I was excited to get out of the military, but when I got out of the military, I found that I ran at a totally different speed, with a very focused approach to kind of everything that I did. And I imagine if you're taking, high level corporate and entrepreneurial folks, they probably have a very particular way that they see the world and the way they do things. What is that transition like when you slide them into that warm bath, when you slide them into that slower, more thoughtful way of living for that period of time?
Yeah. I think most people are a little, there's a sense of letting go and a sense of relief when they get there. And also, by the way, when someone signs up to come on the program, it's usually some time in advance because they're needing to logistically, plan this. So I've got touch points with the clients up to 6 months prior to us going, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm priming them. We create a group. I'm, communicating with them and making sure that they're training, because you need to have some level of fitness to trek where we trek.
Mm-hmm.
And, priming them for it and giving them little bits and pieces. I enter them into the mountains slowly. So we arrive in Delhi and we stay in a nice hotel, and it's a nice hotel that they're used to. It has, the foyer is the same. The conference room is the same. There's mints on the table and jugs of water and a whiteboard. So it's kind of like a transition in.
Mm-hmm.
And the first morning of the program is me giving a helicopter ride over the program, walking them through it, letting them know what to expect, teaching them the etiquette of how to be respectful up at the temple, etc. And then that afternoon, I take them out into Delhi, but not into the hardcore slums of Delhi. I take them into quite a nice area of Delhi. So it's different. Culturally, it's different, but it's still manageable, So I'm easing them in. And then the same way that I ease them into the culture, I ease them up to the elevation. Mm-hmm. So we go to 1,500 meters first, and then we go up and we stay at 1,800 meters for a couple of days, and then we walk up and gradually end up around about 5,000 meters.
Wow.
And occasionally there are people who have altitude sickness, and we need to temper that and we need to work that out. I say to the group before, one of the things that I say to the group before we start walking is, what would you like to do as a group? So there's 8 of you here. If one person experiences altitude sickness and we need to descend and change our route and come back down again, what would you like to do as a group? Do you want to all come down, or do you want us to send one person down with a guide or whatever? Every single person I've taken, and I think I'm up around 100 people now, every single person has said, I don't want to be the reason that the group can't keep going. So if I'm the one who gets sick, please have a guide, just bring me down on my own. I want the group to continue. Everyone said that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fascinating. I don't know if there's a list of things that are interests that would make me really like somebody before we've ever even met in person. But if I had to put one together, fire dancer, traditional tattooist, kindergarten teacher, motorcycle courier, masseuse, and reflexology, that's a pretty great start. Talk to me about the connective tissue. Who is the man that loves all of these clearly so connected things? What do you think draws you to such a eclectic and diverse kind of holistic lifestyle?
When I was younger, I was an experience junkie. I had this insatiable thirst to experience as many different things as possible. So I was, jumping out of planes and rock climbing and abseiling or whitewater rafting or trekking, and also experiencing different countries. And it led me down some weird and wacky paths. But all of those different job things that you read out, most of them were just because I was through all of my 20s and early 30s, I was addicted to travel. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to keep getting into foreign countries. And so to do that, I would pick up jobs along the way, and I'd be in London and living in a squat. And then I got a job as a motorcycle courier. I was traveling through Asia, and someone said you can get work teaching English in Taiwan. So I went to Taiwan and lived there for 1.5 years as a kindergarten teacher, teaching these kids English.
That's great.
The tattooing, I was always into tattoos. And when I was living in India, I just started tattooing myself with sewing needles, and then got better at it and realized I could trade for it. And then over the years of traveling, realized I was good enough to start charging money for it. So then that was my way of funding my travels for years, was tattooing people. All of these things just kind of happened organically, and then when I became a father, so I came home to Australia, fell in love, kept traveling for a couple more years. And then when we had started having children, I realized, wow, I've got to grow up. I've got
Yeah.
to, I got to raise these kids. I need to find a way to give them a home and give them some stability and put them through school and all of that. And I
Mhm.
didn't know what to do because I'd been traveling for a decade. So I got a job with a travel company, international travel company, worked as a travel consultant. And over an 8-year period, had a very successful, short but very successful career with them. And I rose to the top of, senior leadership, and I had a large division that I'd bought into, 150 staff, turning over 100 million bucks a year, and all of the headaches that come with that, all of the pressures to just drive net profit growth quarter on quarter. I worked really hard. I played too hard. I ended up actually really unhappy, and lost again, which was interesting. And that all built up to the midlife crisis. But to answer your question, who is the person who has been through all these different experiences, is just someone who's curious, super curious, and I still am. Someone who values growth, always looking to how I can improve and what can I learn. In fact, part of my meaning of life, my personal meaning of life, is to live and to learn wholeheartedly, and to give and receive generously.
Hmm.
That's my deepest purpose in life. And so I'm always looking to learn. And I think that's taken me around everywhere. And, like most humans, I love connection. And for me, I especially love connecting with people who are very different to me. I love connecting with people where we speak completely different languages and we have a completely different paradigm or understanding of the social fabrics of life, and then finding the things we have in common. I don't know, man, there's something about that I love.
That's beautiful, man. What changed about your experience of life becoming a father?
Mm. It's not about me anymore,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
really. Up until having kids, I was pretty hedonistic, I reckon. It was pretty much about what I wanted to do for me. And then you have kids and it's like, whoa, yeah, it's not about me anymore. It's about
Mm-hmm.
these little people that are my responsibility. So I think having kids really helped me go from boy to man, you know. And I mean, that's a whole conversation in itself, but one of the fundamentals of boy to man is taking responsibility, taking on some responsibility, and yeah, so I think that's what that was about. My boys are 18 and 16 now,
You made
and
it.
we're a
You made
blended
it.
family. And well,
Go ahead.
I don't know about that just yet.
Yeah.
It's been like the last couple of years with my 16-year-old especially have been really testing, really testing. I'm just super grateful that we're very close, and he tells me almost everything, and I'm right there, like we're super close, and our communication's open. But still, it's been a really tough couple of years. He's just coming out of what's been. It could have gone either way
Mm-hmm.
with him, but he's I think he's going to be all right. Um, so yeah, man, I don't know. And my partner has a 15-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. We've been together for 8 years now, so we're all nicely blended. And I got to have a girl in the mix of the kids that we're responsible for, so that's been really lovely as well. But yeah, man, I think it's just about realizing that it's not about you. And then once we get past the question of survival, and once we figure out a way to earn enough money to feed the kids and put a roof over their heads, right? Then we can start to move into contribution. Then we can start to move into, how do I want to positively impact life beyond myself, right? It's not about me anymore. And that journey has been beautifully paralleled with doing a lot of self-work. And the self-work is really essentially about self-okayness, being okay with
Mm-hmm.
myself and my past, letting go of any of the attachments that I've had to trauma or to anything really, just letting go, And the more that we let go and have radical self-acceptance, then the less it needs to be about you, right? Because when you've got stuff, when you've got attachments and hang-ups, it's kind of about you, because you know, excuse my language, you're a bit fucked up with stuff, right?
Sure.
When you can let go of that, and it's an ongoing practice, but the more we can let go of that, then the more I can make it about you, about those around me, about my kids, about my family, about my clients, you know. So, and I'm really enjoying that. You know, it's less about me and it's more about what good can I do around. And I think that's a common story, by the way. I think as people like you and I go through the experiences we've been through, you know, with a bit of wisdom you can then channel your energy into doing some good beyond yourself.
So if the listeners are listening right now and they're anything like me, they've noticed a few things about you. Number one, you have a very pleasant voice, whether it's, you know, your accent or just the way you speak. You're very good at communicating. You're an excellent podcast guest. I could listen to you talk all day. What does conscious communication mean to you? And how does that impact? So your book is The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men. As a thoughtful man, as I color myself to be, what does that mean?
So if we take it quite literally, the words conscious communication, and first of all, communication, which comes from the Latin noun communicatio, which means a sharing, not a telling. It means a sharing. And the Latin verb communicare, which means to make common. This is what communication is. And communication, as we know, and we take for granted, because it underpins our ability to be effective in every aspect of our life, we tend to forget how important it is. You know, the quality of our relationships, which really is directly correlated to the quality of our life. Right? So how beautiful your life is directly related to how beautiful your relationships are. This is underpinned by communication. When the communication falls over in a relationship, the relationship becomes glitchy, right? Our ability to take an idea. So for an entrepreneur who has an idea, to be able to manifest that into reality is through communication. If you can't communicate that idea, it does not become reality. Einstein could have had these wonderful understandings of the mechanical universe that he had, but if he couldn't communicate them, they would have amounted to nothing, you know. And communication is also the bridge over the divide of difference. If we can't communicate, we're just shouting at each other. And then you can be pro-life or pro-choice. You can be pro-vax or anti-vax. You can be red or blue. You can be left or right. But without the ability to communicate, which is to make common our humanity, to make common our desire for the world to be a better place, without communication, it all just falls apart and becomes war, metaphorically and literally, you know. So we understand that communication is ultimately important. Conscious communication. So when we're more conscious of something, we're more aware of it. That's all that means. The more conscious you are of something, the more aware of it you are. So I'm curious about how can we practice the art and craft of being more aware in communication, which means me being more aware of you. It means me being more aware of the higher purpose of the communication itself. It means me being more aware of myself and when I'm getting in the way. When am I, you know, when is the confirmation bias at full tilt, you know, and I'm not hearing you because I'm so locked into the way I think things should be. You know, we are by nature quite closed-minded, and understandably we've had to be to survive as a species through evolution. But I believe that we are coming to a place as a species where we should be able to elevate beyond that now, you know, and I know we can. I speak with people like you, dude. We have these wonderful conversations that are elevated from where we were before, you know, when it was all about trying to defend your status quo, you know. So there are lots of beautiful, open-minded people. I think we just need to keep having these conversations and helping helping humanity continue to evolve. And so then the men piece, I was writing the book generally, and I chose a book writing mentor to help me. And she said, I love your manuscript, it's great, but you're writing too broadly. For this book to have any chance of being successful, you need to pick an audience and write for that audience. And she said, I think men could really do with this book. And so I started writing it for men.
That's fantastic. I hope that sold a lot of books, because that's a message that we all need to hear, men and women. How do you spread effective communication, empathetic communication, in a world full of digital shouting?
Takes a bit more effort. It takes a little bit more effort. There's a couple of things I believe that we need to do as individuals and then collectively. So as individuals, we need to loosen our grip on the way we think things should be. We need to practice open-mindedness. And it's a practice, because our default is to take everything personally. The ego, the sense of identity, can only take anything personally. And then also to be very defensive about our point of view. This happens instantly and automatically. If you're scrolling through social media and you see something that triggers you, immediately you've got an opinion on it. And that opinion is formed by your association to your past and your beliefs around what right and wrong and your values and your whole thing. But it's interesting when with fMRI, when we image the brain, we've seen that the same parts of the brain light up when we talk about who we think we are, so our sense of identity, our ego, and our political viewpoint or our ideological viewpoint. The same part of the brain lights up. So we very much identify with our political and ideological views. And we defend our identity to the death. If someone challenges your sense of who you think you are, the ego gets super defensive. So that's why you can be sitting around a dinner party with a group of friends, and after a couple of glasses of wine, the topic of politics comes up, and two people who were friends can fall out.
Yeah.
And they're never friends ever again. Why? Because they identified with their political ideas, which is crazy, because it's just an idea. I've seen families fall apart over pro-vax, anti-vax in the last couple of years. Families have fallen apart because they believed different things. They had different ideas on what was the right thing to do, So it's quite real in terms of this sense of defensiveness, and then that gets in the way of our communication. So to come back to your question, what can we do? Practice open-mindedness. And what does that look like? Well, how about this? When you read the newspaper or you see some news on your social media or on the television, and there's some information and you react to it, pause. Notice your reaction, take a breath, and just say to yourself, I wonder what other perspective might be possible. I wonder. Yeah, just create those moments to be curious about what alternative perspectives might be possible. Right. So this is an open-mindedness. And then also, this curiosity, dude, if I'm sitting down with you, Jason, and you and I are talking about something and you have a point of view that I really disagree with, right? That to me is a sign. That's a sign for me to take a breath and really lean in and get curious to understand how and why you've come to that point of view. Rather than sitting there and being defensive and thinking, as soon as I can get my word in, I'm going to prove him wrong. I'm going to say, nah, you're wrong. I'm going to disagree. No, hang on. Pause, man. There's a human being sitting in front of you who bleeds the same color blood, who loves his children like you do, who needs food and shelter, food and water, right? You're actually both in this together. And he has a different point of view to you in this moment. Get curious. How did he come to that? Let go of the need to defend your point of view. And it doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with you. It doesn't mean that. but before I come to a point of saying, actually, I choose to disagree, I'm going to do everything I can to try and understand where you're coming from first. And I think that this is super important in any discourse. Yeah, and the digital divides of difference, it's a whole tricky landscape because the algorithms are feeding off causing us to lean in and click and get pissed off and blah, blah, blah. So that's a whole other thing that we need to be aware of. Choose what you click on. Choose
Yeah,
what you
I
click
mean,
on.
a byproduct of the medium is that it's a shit medium for conveying complex ideas, right? The things
Yeah.
that are the easiest to pick up traction are the most, divisive or at least singular, right?
Yeah.
But that aside, I think that was a beautiful way of describing what I think to be just the truth. I would sort of follow it up with, how does it feel to know that you're always right, Jem, because you're not married to an idea, which means that when as soon as one is presented that conflicts with yours and is right, you, I assume, are on that team. And
Yeah.
so does that
Yeah.
feel good to have found that I believe this to be unlocking the mysteries of brilliance, is like, stop trying to be the genius and just do what's right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly liberating. And some of the beneficial symptoms of this understanding, that you don't need to be identified with your ideas, that you can, and that you have nothing to defend. Some of the symptoms of this is that your resilience goes up, you have more energy, your sense of well-being goes up, your ability to form deep connection and rapport with more people goes up. you know People stop attacking you because you're not defending anything. For someone to attack, there needs to be a defense, otherwise the whole thing dissipates.
They still don't like
um
it, though. I will say that they don't like
yeah.
it. If
Yeah.
you, I can imagine if somebody tried to pick a fight with you at a bar, it would be pretty unsatisfying to them if you didn't, reciprocate.
Oh yeah, completely. But the
Yeah.
funny thing is that people don't ever pick fights with me.
Yeah.
um and yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But so how is it, in the practice of having nothing to defend, the practice of letting go? Now we're talking about ideas. Don't get me wrong. If someone came up and threatened my kids, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I will defend my kids completely. I'm not, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm
I do.
talking about ideas, and this is where most people are fighting over stuff. They're fighting over ideas. And people, I believe, and I might be wrong, but I have a belief that most people are generally lovely or good, or wanting to do the best they can do, but they just get sold on bad
Mm-hmm.
ideas,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now this is a stretch to imagine, but the suicide bomber, right? They got sold on some really bad ideas. But that person, when they were born and grew up in the situation that they grew up in, they were waking up every day trying to do what they thought was the right thing to do. They just got sold on bad ideas. If there was a kid who was born in Sierra Leone and witnessed their whole family being terribly raped and murdered, and then was given an automatic weapon at the age of 12 and brainwashed into thinking this is what you have to do, I argue that that same human being, if they were born in my family, in my little beach town down here, they wouldn't be going around killing people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not so much that there are bad, evil people. It's just that there are some crazy ideas, and that's what. And when we grab onto those ideas and defend them to the death, that's when it's problematic, you know. So yeah, I think it's certainly a pursuit worth investing your energy in, is to loosen your grip a little bit.
Well, I agree with you, and I would also add that there's two kind of things that are happening in society that I'm observing. One of those is, it seems like there are, and maybe there are some ideas that qualify as this, but it seems like all political ideas now are so important that they're right that I'm willing to lie or break my ethical ethos
Mm,
in
mm.
order to defend. So I don't even need to give examples, but every conceivable side of these problems that we've been discussing today. It seems like, number one, there are people, good people, that are like, it's okay for me to be intellectually dishonest because this is that important. Whether, I mean, the example that's probably easiest is like Donald Trump is so bad that it's okay for us to do X, Y, or Z. And then the second thing is that because of the environment that our public discourse has created, of whether you want to call it cancel culture or just even just blowback, whatever it may be, there's all these people that maybe would come to the table in goodwill and have earnest discussion that are silenced. I don't have political conversations publicly. I don't know if you do or don't. I haven't dug in on your social media, but it's something where I go, I don't want to get into a big knockdown, drag out fight. And so with those two ideas kind of in conflict, it's such a relief, or at least it's inspirational, to see folks like you that leave the weapons at home and just say, let's just talk about what talking about things should look like.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful, man. And I guess if there's a question in here anywhere, it's how do you magnify your voice and how do others pick up the banner and carry it? Because I don't think there's any topics that are so important that we should continue to not talk about things in a way that is more productive.
Yeah. We should be able to talk about things that need to be talked about. We should be able to, and sadly, people, like you said, people are reluctant to touch certain topics because they don't want to be cancelled, so to speak, or at least they don't even want that. It's not that they care about being cancelled per se, but they just don't want to be dragged into a low level.
Yeah, I'm not a politician. I don't want to have a political conversation publicly.
Yeah, yeah. And how do we magnify it? Look, I'm on a personal level. I'm doing what I can. I think I'm up to about 70 podcast interviews this year. We're getting the book out there. I was in LA actually last week. I was in LA having meetings and super excited to have been picked up by Scott Miller and his business partner, Tony. Scott Miller is from Franklin Covey. They've got their own literary speaker agency, and they've offered to represent me in the States, and we're going to go and see if we can get some publishing deals and that kind of thing. So that's super exciting. And, he had me on his podcast a few weeks ago, which is on leadership with Franklin Covey. There's a plug for you, Scott. And I was blown away to be on this podcast. We've got on there Deepak Chopra and Robin Sharma and, the likes of some of my favorite authors ever on this podcast, and then this little old bloke from a surf town in Australia, Jem. But I was, of course, honored and stoked to be on that show. Why? Because it's a platform where hopefully people can hear what we're talking about. And that's why I love the podcasting platform, because you can have these long free-form conversations, and you or I haven't been told what to say. There's no sponsors in the background saying you have to, don't say that, and you must say. You and I can just have an honest conversation and then air that for whoever can listen to it, and I think that's a really important platform. So yeah, I'll just keep having good conversations with good people and keep writing books and keep running retreats and coaching the leaders that I coach, and bit by bit, right?
If you came across yourself from 10 years from now, what would he tell you you're currently maybe not doing wrong, but what advice would he give you? Where you're going to be in 10 years, what would that person tell you could be doing differently now?
I think about this a bit. And I actually sometimes meditate and imagine that I can go into the future and meet my future self and say g'day. And the first thing he says to me every time, we did this just recently, my partner and I, and the first thing he says to me every time is thank you. He says, thank you for everything that you're doing, because it all leads to where I am right now. And the future version of me 10 years from now is as grateful as I am today for, what I've created. Sure, there's things that I'm not very good at. The marketing side of stuff, I'm not, that's just not my forte, right? And and I've got a team, and I'm trying to find the right people to help me do that. I think I just keep looking. I'll keep looking for the people who are the genius in those areas, who can help me. And I do have good people working with me and for me now. But I'll keep looking, because some of that stuff I just don't know how to crack. I'm not a natural social media guru influencer type person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing what I think I should do. I'm posting and I'm sharing good content, blah blah blah, but I don't know how to create 100,000 followers on Instagram, and organically. And I don't know how to get 1 million people to watch my TEDx talk. We've had 100,000, but apparently I should have 1 million people watch the TEDx talk. Those bits I don't know how to do. So I'll keep looking for people who do know how to do that, and engage them, I think.
Don't
Yeah.
let them
But
change you.
no, don't let them change. Well, see, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Someone said to me the other day, maybe you should do some controversial
Yeah.
post to
That's
get
the,
to get
yeah.
more thing. I'm like, no, look, I don't want to go and try and be someone I'm not, just to get followers. I'm just going to keep on being me, dude, I reckon. And look, I am passionate, and I'm driven. I'm an action taker. I get out of bed every day saying today's a great day, and I go out there and do whatever I can do to make a positive difference. I'm prepared to take risks, and so far so good. If you had said to me 10 years ago that I'd be living on this beautiful 300-acre farm with ocean views, and that I'd be traveling the world running retreats, and that my coaching books are full, and I coach executive across government, not-for-profit, and the private sectors, and that I get to surf and hang out with my kids and camp, and my life is just wonderful. So I feel like I just keep showing up the way I am, man. We'll see what happens, eh?
Yeah. Hopefully you make more and more of you through those influences and impacts, man. There's two
Cheers.
questions, Jem, that I ask everybody that comes on the show. I'd like to ask you those questions now. Are you ready?
Yeah, man.
All right. Question number one. It's a little more businessy than the rest of this conversation, but question number one is, if I gave you access to unlimited financial resources, how would you profitably grow your businesses?
My first investment would be into my online school. I've got 3 online courses at the moment, but I've got a whole heap more that I'm building. So I would invest in the online school, and then I would employ someone full time to market those courses. That's the scalability factor for me. Because once I've got those set and forget courses that are getting in front of the right people, and people are buying them, then happy days. Passive income, reasonably, I would do that. I would actually see less of my bread and butter one-to-one clients. I would see less, so that I could write more. I really enjoyed writing this book. It was quite an enjoyable process. And the book just won an award, and people are loving it. And I'm getting emails from people thanking me for writing the book. So that's nice. That feels, I like that, so I'd spend more time writing books. I would probably spend more time on the ground in the States. I'm really interested in connecting and helping more people in your country. It's just such a massive population compared to Australia. And also culturally, in the business world in the States, you're about 10 years, 15 years in front of us in terms of your ideas around culture and people and coaching and investing in that sort of stuff. You guys actually lead the way corporately in that sensibility. So I'd love to be involved in that. I'd probably spend more time over there. It's funny, my mate Scott the other day, we had lunch down in Newport Beach together to kind of firm up this deal. And he said to me, so would you move to the States? And I said, no way, man. I live in paradise.
Yeah, no way.
I'm not going to move here. I'll come a lot. I will come. I will fly over here all the time and do work with you. But no, you should see where I live. And we've got healthcare.
I love that. I love that, because I'm the same way. I don't live in a 300-acre farm on the beach like that, but I don't live where a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff are. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. It'd be tough to get me out of here. It's too beautiful.
Too beautiful.
The second question is, if you had to give up everything you've done professionally and start something totally new that you've never done before, what do you think that might be?
Wow.
That's going to be a hard one for you, isn't it?
That's a hard one for me, man,
Yeah.
because I'm not an entrepreneur for the sake of building a successful business that I can then sell, or, that's not why I do what I do. I'm entrepreneurial in terms of I've paved my own way, and that, but I do what I do because it's my vocation, it's my passion, it's my expression of what life means to me. So what would I do? What
I was
else
going to
would I
say, and
do?
yet I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. What would you
Yeah.
do? Yeah.
Yeah. What would I do? I would look to set up, I would look to set up a social enterprise, a not-for-profit social enterprise that was doing good and funded itself. So, for example, my brother in the Himalayan mountains, it's apple country up there.
Oh.
They grow a lot of apples. And it's hard for the apple growers up there because by the time they get their apples down out of the mountains into a market, and they grow them all organically, so there's no pesticides or anything, they get paid a pittance for them, almost nothing. And then the apples get shipped down to the cities, and then they get shipped out, etc. If we could build, and this was my brother's idea, if we could build a factory up in the foothills, a factory that was a cider making factory, apple cider, right? And the brand of it was organic Himalayan apple cider. And the market in India is massive, 1.5 billion people. And I've got connections down in Delhi who work in hospitality. They run bars and restaurants all around India. So if I could help these local organic farmers, and all they had to do was bring their apples just down to the factory up where they are, and we pay them top dollar for their apples, and then we turn it into organic Himalayan apple cider and then distribute it all around India or the world, I'd be interested in doing that.
Well, if you're out there and you'd like to help Jem to make that a reality, that sounds like an amazing idea.
I think,
Jem,
and by the way, I think if it was done right, we could smash that.
oh
We could
yeah,
absolutely smash it.
you're
Yeah.
describing a pretty kick-ass. I mean, this is what probably Fiji water started as, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that has a whole host of other things. Jem, this has been fantastic. I think you're an unbelievably interesting and thoughtful human being. I think you've lived a diversity of life, and I can't wait to see the next time we talk what you've done between now and then. For the folks listening at home who I'm sure would love to see more about what you do, how can they find you? Where can they find you?
So Jem Fuller, JEMFULLER, on every platform. Follow me on Insta. That's where I'm the most. I'm on there every day posting stuff, or jump onto my website, jemfuller.com. You can, watch the TEDx talk. You can buy the book. You can reach out to me, man. I'm super accessible. I'm not one of these people that is too busy to reply. So if you email me, I'll be emailing you back. Yeah, man. And I would love to connect with anyone who wants to.
Awesome. Jem, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your story and your time.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, bro. It's been great.
Yeah.